The U.S. says it will adjust its military posture to counter North Korea's continued provocations and threats. It stressed the need to protect its allies in the region, as Pyongyang is believed preparing for its first nuclear test in more than 4 years. Officials from the United States, Japan, and South Korea met today in Seoul to prepare for various contingencies against threats from North Korea. Pyongyang has fired several ballistic missiles this year in violation of UN resolutions. South Korea's newly appointed nuclear envoy, Kim Gunn, says the North's provocations will only strengthen their resolve, while Japan's representative, Funakoshi Takehiro, has vowed to enhance regional deterrence and trilateral security cooperation.
Our bottom line has not changed. Our goal remains the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And we want to make clear to the DPRK that its unlawful and destabilizing activities have consequences, and that the international community will not accept these actions as normal. And the only viable path forward for DPRK is through diplomatic negotiations.
And for more on this, Nick Harper joins us live from Washington, D.C. Nick, how exactly can the U.S., South Korea and Japan actually prepare for potential nuclear tests by North Korea?
Well, the name of the game really seems to be working together. That's why we're seeing this trilateral meeting taking place in Seoul. There is some concern that nuclear test could be imminent, the first in more than 4 years. There had been some thinking that North Korea could carry out a test while President Biden was recently in the region, in South Korea and Japan. But Sung Kim, the US special representative to North Korea, has been meeting with his counterparts in Seoul, speaking about this, saying that the US is preparing for all contingencies and doing so by coordinating with allies South Korea and Japan. He said it involves both short and long-term planning, and it involves making adjustments to US military posture. The US also said that it would respond to North Korea's provocation as necessary and potentially strengthen both defense and deterrence. And those two last words are the important ones, defense and deterrence. Essentially put, it involves potentially the US strengthening its military presence in the region, but also looking at other ways to counter North Korea, potentially economically with more sanctions, with the three countries potentially putting more restrictions in place against North Korea. One silver lining perhaps coming out of all of this, South Korea's nuclear envoy saying that essentially what the North Koreans are doing by moving ahead with this potential nuclear test, the end result of it is strengthening the alliance and partnership between the three countries, the US, Japan and South Korea. So they are shoulder to shoulder and really looking for new ways that they may be able to push back against North Korea if it were to carry out yet another nuclear test.
Nick, of course, Washington will need to look to working beyond even its immediate allies. So, for example, Russia and China. Now, Washington saying both not working with them to manage the threat from North Korea. Why is their support, both singly and in concert, necessary to putting any pressure on the North?
Yeah, it's a big problem, and it's been a big problem for some time, something the US and the United Nations has been highlighting for some time. It's really all about trying to choke off revenue streams for North Korea, so stopping them earning money that they would normally get, that they could then funnel into that nuclear and ballistic missile program. Now, in the past, over the last few years, we've seen UN Security Council resolutions strengthening the type of restrictions on North Korea, so preventing North Korea from exporting the goods that it can export, things like coal and sand. Those type of things have been prevented. But UN experts are saying that North Korea is getting around those sanctions by dealing directly with China and Russia. So China buying hundreds of thousands of tons of coal, providing North Korea with hundreds of millions of dollars, also dealing with Russia as well for petroleum goods. The problem being that if North Korea continues to deal with those countries, they're able to evade the sanctions that are. We're also seeing at this time no unity on the UN Security Council. Just last Friday, both Russia and China vetoed a resolution that was put forward to try and strengthen sanctions on North Korea. The thinking is that both countries, because of the problems in Ukraine at the moment, were deliberately pushing back against this US-led effort to strengthen sanctions on North Korea. So with that lack of unity in the UN Security Council, with those resolutions that have been passed proving ineffective, the US is quite simply saying it's very difficult to hold North Korea to account because they're continuing to evade those sanctions and continuing to get money that they can then use for their nuclear testing program.
And thanks for that. Nick Harper speaking to us there from Washington, D.C.